Hey kids, we're live. I'm not plugging anything today. I will start plugging something next week. I got a new sponsor that's going to try me out. So it's it's Postmates, and I've got a code, but I don't think the code is live yet. So I'll wait till next week. I think I got interviews next week too. So here we are. It is, what is this, Tuesday? Yeah, I think it is. Um, I'm pretty stoked tonight because I've got Trent Mabry. He was a fixture in the Indianapolis comedy scene, and in 2020, he won Indy's Funniest Person. And with that, he started a podcast. Actually, before that, There You Go with Trent Mabry, which is a kind of a comedy advice podcast. Pretty funny. I like it. In 2021, though, he packed his stuff and moved to New York. And we're going to unpack his comedy career tonight. It's Trent Mabry. Hey,
Hey,
did you catch that?
I did. I like that.
You packed up and now we're unpacking?
Let's unpack, baby.
Holy cow. I'm just a wordsmith tonight.
You are. I enjoyed that a lot.
Trent, thank you for being on the show. This
Thanks.
is great. You still look
Yeah, thanks
12,
for
so
having me.
that's cool.
Yeah, I'm
New
trying
York
to hold on to that for a while.
Yeah, New York hasn't turned you into a grizzled old man, so
Not
that's a
yet. Not
that's
yet.
a big plus. So let's talk about your comedy career and how it started, because I know you started. I read a print interview that they did after you won that contest. I know you started fairly early. How old were you when you first started doing stand up?
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you did research on me. That means a
Yeah,
lot.
I even watched your clips.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nobody does. Um, I was 17 when I first started.
Okay.
Because at the club you had to be 17 to that was the only time you could get in.
Uh huh. But
And
you wanted to do it before that, but you had to wait till you were 17.
yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to do it since I was in middle school. And then I got my license. I was like, all right, now because I felt weird to have my mom take me to a comedy club and
Uh-huh.
watch me perform. So I waited till I got my license, and then as soon as I hit 17, I signed up for an open mic at this place called Crackers in
Uh-huh.
Broad Ripple, Indiana.
Yeah. I
Yeah, I
used
had
to
to
go to the
round up
Vogue.
5 of my friends.
Yeah,
Oh,
when
the
I lived
Vogue,
in
yeah.
Indy, I used to go to the Vogue. This was in the 80s, and
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun.
Never went to the Vogue. I'm not a big, club party guy.
Yeah. Well, you should be. You're in New York now.
I know, yeah.
So I have to say, I want to talk about you starting, but in the clips I've watched, you look so comfortable up there, and you I you command the stage without being like, like a wild, you know,
Mhm.
super animated comedian. You have enough sense to let people laugh. You got great timing and all that. So were you that comfortable when you started?
Um, didn't really get nervous the first time I did stand up.
Hmm.
Um, Looking back at, my friend recorded my first time, and it's horrible, but
Yeah.
I got laughs the first time. Then the second time I bombed.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I was always I never really got like stage fright or nervousness. Um, Throughout my time doing stand up, obviously got more comfortable, and I feel like the past 3 years, I've kind of just started enjoying how I'm delivering material and stuff.
Hmm. So were you kind of I hate to say class clown because that's such an overused term, but were you kind of a funny guy in school too?
I was a shy kid
Were you?
when I was in
Okay.
school, but around my friend group and stuff, I was funny.
Okay.
But I wasn't yelling out during class or anything like that,
Yeah.
goofing around.
Okay, you seem like an outlier. You seem like you remind me a little bit of me. You don't seem to, I follow you on social media and stuff like that. You don't seem to be like all caught up in what everybody is into at any
Sure,
particular
yeah,
time. You're just one of those eh, people. You don't need a whole bunch of people around you. You don't need
yeah.
to fit in. You just do your own thing, and you're happy with that. Do I have you pegged right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I love doing my own thing. I love. I don't know. I'm an only child. I think that might be have something to do with it. But
Yeah.
I love doing stuff by myself. Never really cared about like getting into a group or something like that.
That's great. There's so few of us around because everybody
I
seems
know.
to be in, all the comics. There's the ones that are into wrestling. There's the ones that are into Marvel stuff and comic
Well,
books
I
and
do like
DC stuff.
wrestling. I do like
Okay,
wrestling.
well, there you go. And it's all those things are, and you come to it because you want to, not because other people do it. But it's all those things that like you, I'm not into a lot of that stuff.
Hmm.
I'll rewatch the X Files before I start watching a whole bunch of Marvel stuff, and I will watch a
Yeah.
Marvel movie like out of the blue, and I don't care what all the exposition is, and if I didn't watch this movie, then I don't know what's going on in this movie. I don't care. I just want to see the
Hmm.
stuff and be done with it. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's it just seems evident with you. Now you seem like because, we were talking before we went on air about you having Jeff Altman on, you also seem to be one of those, guys that knows about the old school comics and
Hmm.
you know them and you study them. Are there some old school comics that really, kind of shaped how you wanted to be a comic?
Um. Well, I do love like the history of stand up and stuff. Um. I mean, I loved watching Letterman when I was
Mhm.
growing up. So then he would have like Jeff Altman and Tom Dreesen on, and John Witherspoon, Paul
Mhm.
Mooney, guys like that. Yeah, I mean, I loved just the history of stand up and comedy in general, really.
That's
But
great.
my
So
favorite
what
guys are like Norm,
Yeah,
Colin Quinn,
yeah,
Gilbert. I'm a big Gilbert Gottfried fan.
yeah, so am I.
Yeah.
His podcast is the best.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just the intros. He reads their whole IMDb every time.
And then just messes up their name.
Yeah. Who are you again? Yeah, he's really good at that. And your style reminds me, not of Gilbert, but more. You're a little bit more old school in your style. You're,
Hmm.
almost, you know, you're you're like Newhart, but you kind of got like sex jokes in there and stuff too. So
Well, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I love new art too.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I try to like. I see a lot of guys, especially in New York, since I've been here. A lot of people all kind of sound the same. Like a lot of them are very funny, but they all kind of have the same delivery and same material and stuff. And I've always kind of tried not. I never had it in my head to like try to be different. That's just what comes naturally
Mhm.
to me, I think.
And there's kind of a Midwest meter about the way people speak and terminology and just the way we go into our act. It's just different, and
Mhm.
everybody will, compare us to Letterman, but we can't help it because we're from the same area, and
Exactly, yeah.
it's just the way we talk. We say golly and all that kind of stuff, and it's just
Yeah.
it's just part of it. I did a set, uh down here in Huntsville when I moved down, and the it was an open mic, and the guy that was running it said, I've never heard golly so many times, but it's just part of what we say, and
Yeah.
golly and ope, that's what we got. So starting at 17 and doing the mics and stuff you were doing, when was it that you finally felt like, okay, this is something I want to pursue as a vocation?
Um, well, even before I started, I knew this is what I wanted to do. I didn't have like I never wanted to be anything else. Like I never
Uh-huh.
wanted to be like a fireman or whatever. Um, I always wanted to do stand up, so I never really had like a backup plan. I never intended on going to college or anything
Uh,
like that. Um, so I don't know if I got on stage the first time and I didn't like it, I think I would have just fallen into pieces because I
yeah.
had no idea what I wanted to do besides this.
I'll be staying at home for the rest of my life.
Exactly.
Now, you're originally from Franklin, and Franklin, it's a funny little town because a lot of artsy people come out of Franklin. And there's a band I follow called Brother Oh Brother, and both of those guys are from Franklin. And
Oh yeah.
the Chris, who's the guitar player and singer, he also runs a record company where he presses all this exotic vinyl that
Oh,
he
I think
puts.
I've seen that before.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
puts liquid filled stuff, and he does LED stuff sometimes, and just does really crazy stuff with vinyl. Dan Cummins did a album
Yeah.
on his label, so on Romanus Records, so or Romanus, however they pronounce it. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And both those guys came from Franklin, and they still live in Franklin.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice area.
Yeah, yeah, they got a Lowe's.
Yeah, they got a Lowe's, a Walmart, about 5 Mexican restaurants.
Yeah. So at 17, when you're starting and deciding this is what you want to do, what was your way of coming up with material and constantly feeding that writing habit?
Mhm. Um, well, when you're in high school, you're just joking around with your friends. So then you'd have like running bits with your friend group, and then I would try to turn that into something that would work on stage. And then you just like run material by like my buddy Scott. I still run material by him. He's been
Hmm.
my friend since middle school. Um, and then I go through like spurts of where I write a lot and then I won't write anything
Hmm.
for a long time. Just kind of like a writer's block where I'll try to come up with something and then nothing happens. But I still like try to sit down and at least come up with a good joke to tweet or something
Uh-huh.
every day. Doesn't always work,
Yeah.
but yeah, you just gotta try and sit down and write at least once a week of try new stuff.
Hmm.
Here lately, it's been weird doing like open mics and stuff in New York where you're not known, so you kind of feel like, okay, I want to have a good set in front of people, so I don't really want to try out new
Yeah.
stuff.
So you bring out the greatest hits. I do
Yeah,
the same thing. Yeah.
yeah.
And you know it's, I mean, you have to continue practicing, and
Mhm.
every time you do it, it gets better. But
Yeah,
if you don't ever try new stuff, then you've run out of material, and then
absolutely.
especially after you've been heard a few times doing that material. So yeah, I
Yeah.
dig it. It's hard for me because being down here, I'm new to the scene and nobody knows me, so
Mhm.
I bring out the greatest hits,
Yeah.
and I might throw in one new thing and try it out. But yeah, it's not one of those things yet where I feel comfortable enough to just do all new stuff.
Sure, yeah. But when back in I was in Indy, I would just go up and try a new 5 minutes whenever I felt like it.
Yeah, and it was okay because
Yeah.
you were, and everybody I talk to that's from Indy says it's a good scene for comics because everybody's pretty nice to each other.
Mhm. Yeah, I like the indie scene a lot.
Mm.
I felt like I always wanted to move to New York, and I felt like I did everything I wanted to do in Indy,
Hmm.
and now it's a good time to move.
Yeah. One of the things that Altman said when I talked to him, and I don't remember if he said this to you, but he said if you really want to do it, you got to go to New York or LA. Still,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's not something that you can get away with not doing. You got to at least spend some time out there. So
Very rarely. Like some guys can go viral on the internet and then build
yeah,
a career off that, but
yeah.
that happens very rarely.
Well, let's talk about that because I was listening to a podcast when I was driving today that was talking about that. You get the TikTokers and the
Mm-hmm.
YouTubers and stuff like that, and they go in, they go on a comedy tour, and
Yeah.
they don't know anything about comedy. Have you worked with anybody like that?
No, no YouTubers or anything like that. Um, I've seen some of their acts just hanging
Yeah,
out at clubs, and some of them are okay, and then some of them you can tell like, okay, this is just a money grab. They don't even really like doing comedy. They just know that it's easy money.
yeah. I
They
mean,
can
their
sell at a club.
notoriety, yeah, their notoriety is really that carries them for about a minute on stage, and
Mm-hmm.
then it kind of falls flat.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what I've seen, and they haven't gone through the work because to be a comedian, you have to do the work, and that's a little bit different than shooting a 90-second TikTok.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
And then I don't like. It's weird though. Like I'll see guys that have like 1 million, 2 million followers, and then I have no idea who they are. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, I feel like I'm of the generation that should be into those people,
Yeah.
but I have no idea like the famous YouTubers or who's big on TikTok.
But
Um,
you're an outlier. We
that's
talk,
yeah,
and it just doesn't matter. I mean, there's only 24 hours in a day, and you want to spend it doing what you want to do,
exactly,
and
yeah.
watching all these TikToks and Instagram reels and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I'll give it 10 minutes sometimes, but that's about all they get.
Yeah.
And some of it's really good, some of it's funny. Like Corey Ryan Forrester, he was a guest on the podcast, and the video stuff
Hmm.
that he does is great.
I've heard the name. Like Brent Terhune is great. I don't really
Yeah.
consider him like a YouTube guy. I guess he is, but his stuff's great.
Yeah, he actually did a few videos with Corey Ryan Forrester. They're friends, so
Okay.
they did a few together. Uh, it was um it was during the pandemic, and one of them was playing a reporter, and the other one was playing president's press secretary. So it was funny. It was good. Now we talked about writing, but when you have a joke, how fully baked does it have to be for I said fully baked. um and are we? Maybe, I don't know. But maybe one of us is. But the um the joke is put together in, you know, maybe it's 50% baked, maybe it's 100% baked. How fully formed does a joke have to be before you'll even try it out?
I usually all my jokes usually come out. I feel like fully formed, and then I'll do it on stage and maybe like add a couple tags
Mhm.
on stage or think of something on stage and then write it down later. But
Mhm.
everything I do is usually fully written out. Sometimes I'll go on stage with an idea and try to work it out, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I
Mhm.
always try to write everything out beforehand.
Okay. And do you record your sets?
I do, but I rarely ever actually listen to them.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's a good thing. I need to start doing it. I think I would get even more out of it. But I do record everything, and then I rarely listen to it. I'll listen to it every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Indy's funniest person because you won that in 2020. I don't know if you remember. It was
It sounds familiar.
a
Yeah.
long, long time ago. So, I mean, people bitch about comedy contests, but to actually win it, it's usually somebody who is a very good comic. It's
Mhm.
never a scrub. It's never somebody who's never done comedy before and isn't funny. So you can bitch about all you want, different tastes and stuff like that. But if you're universally funny, then you're gonna do well, and you did well. So what were the mechanics behind that? How many times did you have to perform?
There were 3 rounds. Um, the first round, I think you did 5 minutes. Second round was 8 minutes, and then the final round was 10.
Okay. And did you use any of the former bits to round out your 10 minutes, or did you have all new stuff every time?
I think I did maybe 1 or 2 of the same jokes from the first round. The second and final round were done by judges.
Okay.
So, and then the first round was all audience vote. So
Mhm.
the judges hadn't seen the first round set. So I think I did a couple jokes, but everything else was all new material.
And was that material stuff that you had worked on for a long time, or did you do it especially for the contest?
Well, during that time, it was like in the middle of the pandemic, so there weren't a lot of open mics and stuff to work on your sets. So I did like most of it was old stuff, and then I did a few newer jokes um, on each of the shows, just to like. I feel like that's kind of why I did well, is because I was kind of taking risk
Mhm.
during my sets, just because there wasn't. That was the only times I was getting up because nothing else was going on.
Uh-huh.
So I wanted to do new stuff as well as like old stuff, and of course try to win. But
Yeah. Now,
it also felt weird to like not talk about the pandemic while it was going on. That was like in the
right.
thick of it.
Yeah.
It's just weird to just do old material.
Yeah, yeah, just pretend it's not happening.
Yeah.
Do you have any jokes that came out of that that just became, like, some of your A jokes?
From the pandemic?
Well, out of the contest specifically.
Um not I did like most of the stuff that I was doing was about like coronavirus and stuff, which it's some of it still works, but a lot of people are tired of hearing about it.
Mhm.
But nah, I think like a lot of like the stuff that works well, I was already doing, and then I have some new stuff that it's been working well, but I didn't do it during the contest.
Mhm. Did you write, the pandemic specific stuff and almost wish that it was funny enough, almost wish that the pandemic just kept going on so that you could still do it? Without
um,
people dying, of course.
sure, sure. Well, yeah, without people dying, I wish everything was still relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't write a whole lot of coronavirus stuff, but when I don't know how you felt during the pandemic, but I was like, I had no desire to write, and
Mhm.
I had to make myself write. So I was just doing like I was looking at USA Today and looking at their stupid stories, looking at the weird news and stuff like that, and
Mhm.
just making stupid jokes about it, and which is totally off of the way mine's more story stuff and just being, a dopey older guy on stage
Right.
and writing that stuff. It was a good exercise because then it's good to know that you can still write stuff. Some of it was not very funny, and some of it was okay.
Hmm. Um, I kind of felt the same way about writing stand-up material, but I wrote like a short story during the lockdown,
Hmm.
and I made a couple sketches and stuff, which I never did before
Hmm.
everything shut down. I was just writing stand-up material, so I wrote. I kind of enjoyed it in that my job shut down, so I was just bored at home.
Uh-huh.
So I enjoyed that aspect of it, of like having time to try to write other avenues of comedy.
Hmm. Do you have aspirations to get into writing or doing other things like screenplays and stuff like that, other than just
Yeah,
stand
I
up?
would. I'd love to write for a late night show or write a sitcom or something like that.
Hmm. It's amazing how many people just kind of backed into that type of job without even knowing it was coming up.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
I'm
well, I've
reading.
had like some Letterman writers on my podcast,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, it's just they go to college and then some guy remembers them and then asks them to submit material they're writing for Letterman the next day. It's just weird. You just kind of luck into jobs like that. Obviously, you have to be talented, but
Yeah,
you never know when it's gonna come.
yeah. So was winning the contest, the Indy's funniest person, was that like a source of validation to you to know that you're on the right track?
Oh, definitely. Um, I told myself if I won that I would move to New York.
That's what I was gonna ask. Was that the
Yeah,
kind of the catalyst that
yeah,
made it feel like it was the right thing to do?
hmm, yeah.
That's great. Now, as far as the New York scene is versus the indie scene, you've got more opportunity, of course, because there's lots of mics, there's lots of different ways to get on stage. How are you doing that in New York? What type of a plan do you have as far as getting on stage and stuff like that?
Well, the scene here is obviously it's very different. But the open mics here, um, it's all comics. There's never really an audience, which
Mhm.
is a big difference from Indiana,
Yeah.
where you would have audience, and the reason for that is you can go see a professional comedy show any night you want in New York at any time,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So why would you go see a bunch of open micers?
Right.
Um, so that's definitely been like a weird transition to make because comics will just sit in silence when you're on
Mhm.
stage.
Right.
There's no way of knowing. Like, I mean, you'll get a laugh sometimes, but it's not normally what an audience might laugh
Uh-huh.
at. So that's been interesting. But what I've been figuring out, and a lot of people have told me that when I moved here, is like you get more from just going to shows and hanging out with the other comics as opposed to doing mics.
Mhm.
Um, and that's how I've been getting booked a lot here, is just going to shows and meeting other people. And then they'll throw me up maybe that night or maybe the next week, or you gotta ask to be on shows, which is something I'm not great at.
Yeah.
But in Indiana, you would go to the open mic. There was more of a structure. You go to the open mic, you do well, and then the manager of the club would ask you to do a weekend.
Mhm.
Well, that doesn't really happen here, and like the comics are all running the open mics. There's hardly ever somebody in charge of the club or the bar watching the show.
Mhm.
So the open mics, you obviously have to do them. You have to keep performing. You have to stay fresh on stage. And it's good to meet other comics, but you don't really get booked from the open mics. It's all about meeting other people.
Mhm.
So that's definitely been a something I have to work on here.
Are you running into a lot of other transplants from different places as you go to these mics? Or a lot of folks flocking back to New York?
There, yeah, it does seem to be like a lot of new comics that moved here around the same time I did, all trying to figure it out at the same time. But I was lucky enough to know people that moved here, um, like years before me, and like
Oh,
worked with guys that are in the clubs and stuff here. So I feel like I have a good in with some people. Like I knew kind of what to expect when I got
mhm.
here. I couldn't imagine just moving here, um, like a year into comedy, not knowing anybody really,
Yeah,
and trying to figure that out. Or
right.
starting year. Starting year would be wild.
Uh-huh. And a lot of people do.
Yeah, I
Um,
know.
so as far as the networking is concerned, just getting to know people and asking to be on shows and stuff like that, is does that feel like you've been there a few months now? Does that feel
Mhm.
like that is starting to become fruitful enough that you think it's gonna turn into maybe like regular spots or anything like that yet?
Um, I think compared to a lot of people that have been here for, I've been here coming up on 4 months.
Mhm,
I think I've been getting more shows than a lot of people that have been here for the same time period that I have.
mhm,
Um, I think, yeah, I think hanging out at shows definitely has helped me get more stage time. Um, I had an audition at this place called Broadway Comedy Club,
mhm,
and I got like a residency, a month-long residency, so I get like 4 shows next month, and then if they like me after those 4 shows, I should get passed at the
mhm,
club, which means I can get booked there like once a week, or they do shows every night.
mhm.
Um, so hopefully that'll do well. But I assume on those shows you'll meet other comics that are, they'll see you, and hopefully you'll get shows out of that. It kind of is like a domino effect. Like you'll
Mhm,
meet one guy, and then he'll say, "Okay, I run this show. Come out, hang out." And then you go to that show, and he might put you on, and then you meet 6 other comics. Maybe 3 of those people run shows, and then you have the next week you see what shows they're running. You go to those shows, and it's just you meet people like that, and then I think I've been getting shows like that, so I just got to
mhm.
keep doing it, I guess.
So do you think that part of the reason that you're doing well is the type of comedy you do? Because you're I mean, you're not angry. There's a
Hmm.
lot of angry comics out there, and
Sure.
you're not political. You're really just kind of, I mean, you're almost like all the comics I saw in the '80s, except for, you're modern, and I'm saying that as a compliment. I mean, because there's enough, as far as I'm concerned. I love political comedians. I love people who are edgy, and I
Hmm.
love all that kind of stuff. But I almost feel like there's enough, and the fact that people like Nate Bargatze and Jim
Hmm.
Gaffigan and stuff like that, they come out with stuff that just about anybody can listen to, and they're rising to the top, whereas some of the more angry ones are not doing as well.
Yeah. Um. Maybe. Um. I like all that stuff too. Like I love Sam Kinison and guys like that.
Yeah. Lewis
Um.
Black's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes it just feels like there's enough, and sometimes when I
Sure.
watch comedy, I just want to see like what you do. It's just funny. It's not. teaching me a lesson or
Yeah,
trying to change my mind on stuff. It's just
sure.
funny, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I just try to do what comes naturally to me. Like there's a lot of especially younger guys where they'll think, "Okay, I need to deliver a joke this way. I need to be this guy," where they try to shape an identity or that's maybe kind of fake.
Mm,
Whereas I think I kind of realized this because I am such a comedy nerd and I've read like every book ever about
mm,
comedy written by comedians and stuff. I felt like I kind of realized that you just have to try to be yourself as quickly as possible.
mm,
I kind of knew that going in to stand up.
mm. So what if you got a show? What if somebody gave you a TV show? I
Hmm.
mean, I you just seem like one of those people that could happen to.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, I always wanted my guy was Letterman. I always wanted to
Yeah,
be a late
same.
night
Yeah,
host.
yeah.
Yeah. So that I would love to do that. I would do a sitcom. I don't think I'm a great actor. Um, but I would love to like write. I have ideas for sitcoms and stuff. I'd love to be a writer.
Uh-huh.
Um, but my goal, I loved like Norm on Weekend Update. So my goal when I first started was to get on SNL. But
Mhm.
now I kind of don't. I don't care about SNL really. But I would love to host a late night show.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you could be the next Letterman.
I appreciate
Yeah. And you'd still look 12 even when you're 50.
that. Yeah, exactly. Just gray hair with
Now
a
you
baby
came
face.
Yeah, you came about the podcast a little while back. Can you tell me what that's all about?
Yeah, so I started the podcast. Oh, that was another thing I did during the pandemic. I started a podcast. Um, it started out just me, um, and I would get emails of people for people asking for advice, and then
Mhm.
I would give 'em my advice on those topics. And then I kind of got tired of doing it by myself. Um, so then I started having like comics on, and we would get emails asking like what our opinion on like they have a problem. Then we'd give our opinion on that, and then every once in a while I'll interview like I had Jeff Altman on or Tom Dreesen or I've had some Letterman writers on. And I'll just have like regular interviews with those guys, but.
Mhm.
Yeah, for the majority of the podcast is people will email me at advicefromtrent@gmail.com. And then we read the email and have another comic on and we talk about it and give them
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah, really,
It,
really bad advice, but
it's
yeah.
all yeah, it's all it's all bad advice. Well, for comics, if we knew what we were doing, we wouldn't do this.
Well, and some of their problems are really bad too,
Yeah,
so
that's true.
there is no good answer.
Yeah.
You see a lot of different people in the comedy scene, and I'm sure in New York it's like 10 times of what it was in Indy. You just see all these different personalities that uh, do you feel like you run into people that you just know are going to be great and you run into people that you just know are going to crash and burn?
um yeah, I think you can tell pretty early on like when in meeting somebody if they're going to be good or not.
Uh-huh.
Um yeah, there's like I've seen a lot of really good comics and a lot of like really good newer comics that are maybe a year or two in that you
Mhm.
can tell like okay, this guy if he or girl if they keep at it, they can really be something and they're just starting. And then you see
Mhm.
a lot of like guys that have been doing it a long time that are great. But I've seen a lot of bad comics as well,
Right.
just hanging on.
Do you feel like the way things are with, social media, the internet, and the way you can connect with people and bounce stuff off people. Do you feel like that you've got some shortcuts that some of the comedians, like, before the internet age, uh, didn't have?
Yeah, but I also think it's kind of a double-edged sword in that they didn't have to like build a brand, you know.
Mhm.
They didn't have to
Yeah.
promote themselves. Um, you could make a living as a feature back,
Yeah.
you know. Now you barely get by. You have to book your own hotels and stuff. But
Right.
in the heyday, you could just drive. You could work the road doing 20-30 minutes and make it. That's how you made your living,
Right.
which is almost impossible now.
Yeah.
So I think social media helps you develop a fan base, um, but it's a lot more work than people realize, I
Mhm.
think.
Now, that brings me back to one of my favorite books is, Steve Martin's book, is it Born
Oh,
Standing Up? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things he says in it is you have to be undeniably funny, and I don't know that today that being undeniably funny is enough sometimes. You
Mhm.
you gotta be undeniably funny and promote the hell out of yourself.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, there's people that are undeniably funny that don't have a social media following or don't even try to have a social media following. Um, and they're not gonna get anything.
Right.
They might get something just based on luck,
Mhm.
but yeah, you definitely need a following. You definitely need if you want to really make it now, you have to do stuff. You have to have your own podcast, or you have to be doing something yourself. You can't
Mhm.
rely on the industry like you could in the old days.
Do you feel like as far as social media goes, do you think you can lean on, like, 1 or 2 different outlets that you feel like you're getting the most play off of and then leave the rest alone?
I think so. I hope so.
Mhm.
Um, Yeah, like I have no desire to really get on TikTok and make videos and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Um, I try to just do Twitter and then Instagram. Here lately, I've been posting like some stand-up clips on Instagram that have been doing pretty well.
Oh, good.
Um, but yeah, those are my two, and then um, I use it to promote the podcast and stuff.
Mhm.
But it's also like weird now, like when like Twitter and Instagram first came out, like it was all they didn't have the algorithm. It was all just
I
in the
know,
order of
yeah.
how you posted it.
Yeah.
Now it's all gets buried because they can tell when you're trying to promote something.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
really that sucks so bad
Yeah.
because I forget about people because I haven't seen them,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Where did they
Exactly.
go?" And they're still doing things. It's just that
Yeah.
they're not on my list anymore, and it's
Mhm.
just they only give you so many on your list that are gonna show up, and
Yep.
so you have to go out and like their posts and stuff like that, so they'll get on the list, and that's gonna shove somebody else off the list, and
Yeah.
it's just all shit.
Yeah.
It really bugs me, but it's it should be more democratic. Just put it all out there, and you
Mhm.
see what you wanna see, and you just don't look at what you don't wanna look at.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you think that, the, New York scene is something that, do you feel like that it's gonna be something that puts you where you wanna be?
I think so. Um yeah, cuz I've been like my goal like moving here was to get into the clubs. I like and I feel like some of that's far off. Like obviously, it would be a dream to get into the cellar,
Mhm.
and places like that. Um, but I've always wanted to be like a New York club comic. I never really had any desire to like be a Midwest headliner, working doing bar shows and stuff like that. I
Uh-huh.
never like I respect that, and I like a lot of the guys that do that. But I never like wanted to drive 8 hours to make $500 at some bar. You
Yeah.
know, I was always like my envision for my life was like bouncing around the New York clubs, like trying to do like 7 spots a night.
Mhm.
Stuff like that was always look more fun to me.
Yeah. That and I can dig that. If I was your age, I'd probably feel the same.
Mm.
What you I was thinking about work ethic and stuff like that. How many hours a week would you say you put into your comedy career?
Hmm. Well, here lately, a lot.
Mhm.
Just by hanging out at shows, I count that. It
Mhm.
may not.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like work, but that's how you're getting booked at other places.
Mhm.
So lately, I've been trying to go at it every night around. So that would start around like 7, and then I won't get home till midnight, 1 o'clock.
Mhm.
Um, and that would be like hanging out at a show. Then you'll meet some guy. They have a show that they're going to. Um, and then you hang out at that show. You meet somebody else, and then you're not counting like writing during the day and going to open mics and stuff. So a lot of time. But
Yeah.
in Indiana, I would get up maybe 3 3 times a week.
Mhm.
I'd still write, but it was less. I was putting less effort into it just because I didn't have to.
Mhm. And I feel like in the smaller scenes, you don't. I think you said it. You don't need to network as much.
Mm-hmm.
If you're funny, you just get past and you can do some stuff.
Yeah,
And so you can go to an open mic, and if you're the fourth one up, you can do your 5, 10 minutes or whatever they're giving you, and just go home.
yeah.
And you can't get away with that in New York. It sounds like.
No, you can't. Well, yeah. There, that is something like you could at India in Indiana. You go to the open mic, and then you hang out afterwards. If you leave early, it's kind of frowned upon.
Yeah.
But in New York, everybody just leaves as soon as because they got 5 other places they gotta go
Yeah.
that they all have. So that's yeah. Um, it's definitely yeah. But I enjoy it. I like bouncing around, going to different spots, and trying
Uh-huh.
out the same jokes. That's one thing about comedy is you can do the same jokes, but a block away, it'll get a completely different reaction than
Yeah.
the
Yeah. That's
what
really
you just did it
cool.
5 minutes ago. Yeah.
Yeah, that's neat. Thinking about this is something I ask just about everybody. What's the best and worst advice you got from other comedians?
The best advice I got was from the owner of Morty's Comedy Club. Um, he told me because I was getting like I hosted like 6 months into doing stand up,
Mm,
and then he told me you're gonna have like times where you feel like you're not getting anything, and you're not like improving, you're not getting booked more.
mm,
Don't don't worry about it. That happens to everybody. Just keep doing what you're doing, and then you'll see that it's a snowball effect.
mm,
You'll get this thing that'll lead to this thing, and then you may not get anything for another year.
mm,
But then you just got to keep at it. That would be
mm,
the best advice I've gotten. Is like it's all about patience. Like
mm,
you'll see guys that'll get stuff, and you'll be like, oh, well, you'll get jealous, and you'll be like, this guy's not that funny.
mm.
Uh, but eventually, that all weeds itself out. Like it all
Yeah,
leads to something.
yeah. Concentrate on
Um,
yourself, not the people around you.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
The worst advice, I would say. Now, some people may disagree with this. I would say, like, I've had people tell me to like listen to the audience, like try to like write what they or like not write what they like, but listen to the audience, and if they don't like something, cut it out of
Mhm.
your act. Which I guess I understand like that. I agree with that to an extent. But if you want to talk about something and you think it's funny, I don't think you should really. It doesn't work that night. I don't think you should listen to the audience. Like a lot of people put too much on the audience. Like if it doesn't work, but you like doing it, then keep
Mhm.
doing it.
Mhm.
I think. Um, because like I don't know, like guys that you look up to are writing what they think is funny, and then they're telling the audience what's funny.
Right. Right.
You can't like write to what the audience wants, because I think that's why a lot of stand up now isn't that great, because they're trying to play to the audience as
Uh-huh.
opposed to telling them what they think is funny.
Right. And it's funny you say that because I've watched quite a few like Netflix specials and Amazon and Comedy
Hmm.
Central and stuff like that. And some of it, I think you're right. It's not it's not great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of it, starts out really great, and then the middle is just dead, and then
Sure.
maybe the end is okay. But yeah,
Hmm.
I've seen, and when you perform, it's really hard to just enjoy a comedy special because you're trying to pick
Yeah.
apart what's good and what's bad. And the really good comics, and when I was watching your clips, it was something that happened with me that I was just able to enjoy it instead of try
Hmm.
to pick apart. I mean, I did notice things. I did notice that you're very patient. You're very, you know that there's going to be a laugh, and you know that they're going to get something else that you said right before the punchline, and that's going to compound, and the laugh's going to keep growing,
Hmm.
and you just know that, and you're very good at that. And I noticed that, but I was able to just enjoy what you said. And
Oh, thank you. That's great.
the threesome joke with your girlfriend and stuff like that, that's just, it's just good, it's funny, and it's not crass, it's not, you don't have to get into all of the explicit stuff. You can just you can dance around it, and it's still R-rated, but it's not something that's gonna just totally offend everybody in the audience
Yeah. Well,
or
thank you.
shock them. So yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I like that. I like when people are funny without shocking. What do you know now that you wish you would have known when you first started?
Oh, yeah, that's my question.
It was
um.
mine first.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question.
Uh,
Now that is what I always end with when
yeah,
I
I do the
interview
same
people.
thing. So we're
That's
we're
a good
copying each
question.
other.
Yeah, we're great minds. Um, um, let's see. I would say to be patient.
Mhm.
Like, and I did realize this early on, but I see a lot of comics that are starting out where they're funny and um they always do well, but they're kind of in a rush to skip the steps. Like they
Mhm.
want to be in a rush to be a feature, or they want a headline before they're ready.
Mhm.
Um so yeah, I would say like be patient. Don't be in a rush to be a shitty feature, you
Yeah.
know.
Mhm.
take your time, know how much material you have that actually works, and then like don't rush. You'll get there.
Uh-huh. And that, I mean, that shows through because you're patient when you're on stage. So
Well, I learned
you're just
that. Yeah, I
yourself.
feel like I just learned that within the past 3 or 4 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
that's
took me a while to figure out like how I want to deliver
uh-huh.
material.
And if somebody came up to you, some 17-year-old kid came up to you and said, "Hey, I really like your comedy and I want to be a comic," what would you tell them to do? The first thing they should do?
Just sign up for an open mic, get up on stage.
Mhm.
That's all. That's all really you can do. I mean,
Yeah.
you gotta write, but if you can write all day, but you got to get up on stage and perform it at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. I dig that. So where can people find you on the socials?
You can follow me on Twitter at Trent Mabry and on Instagram Trent_Mabry. And the podcast is called There You Go with Trent Mabry, and it's available wherever you get your podcast.
It's a really good podcast. I've enjoyed that since I listened to the first one. So yeah,
Ah,
it's a good
thank you.
podcast. Yeah, I like it. And I really appreciate you being on the show. It's really neat that um you know, I know you went out there with Joe Bates, and I'm glad you got a friend there and stuff like that. So it's really neat that you're chasing your dreams, and I think things are going to happen for you. I
Ah, thanks. Yeah,
I think you're a good one. So I think things are going to happen, and hopefully you remember the old man that interviewed you way back when.
of course.
Well, thanks
Thanks
for
for
being on
having
the
me, man.
show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. All right. Let's stop